So, today, another day, another JoJo video. I know I might be talking about too much, but at the moment, JoJo is my favorite series, so, plus it's making me more views, so I'm gonna milk that cash cow dry. But today is an interesting video. Today, we're going to be talking about what would happen if Jotaro and Polnareff were to switch parts / locations. Now, if you don't know what I mean, Polnareff and Jotaro went and decided to investigate for arrows. And today I'm going to talk about what would happen if they swap locations. So, yeah, prepare, because this will be a very unique video. So, part 3 goes the same as in canon. Everything that happens still happens. Abdel still dies twice, Iggy still dies, and Kakyoin still dies twice. So, everything like that just all goes the same. But when Jotaro and Polnareff go to meet each other a year or two later, they instead switch locations. In this timeline, Jotaro decides to go and investigate the African and European countries, I think was where Polnareff investigated. And Polnareff takes a spot in investigating to the American and Japanese countries. But before Jotaro goes, he decides to have a kid because why not? And then he just leaves. Father of the Year. And that whole thing can happen, so Jolene can still exist. How would the rest of the story change? Well, let's go to the first part to change because of this. First part to change would be Diamond is Unbreakable, where Polnareff takes Jotaro's spot. Now, I don't know if you remember, but in the Dio video I stated that I had an idea with Polnareff taking Jotaro's spot in part 4. This is going to be the video I was foreshadowing in advance to. So, yeah. You're welcome for that early foreshadowing. But anyway, Polnareff in part 4, how'd it go? I'm gonna put him in all the fights Jotaro was in and say how he would do in these fights. First fight is kind of with Josuke. Really it wasn't a battle, but more or less kind of just that. Would Polnareff do what Jotaro did? I would say so. Polnareff would probably kind of be the same thing as Jotaro, bump into Koichi, meet Josuke, and I do think that he would do something similar to Jotaro. As for who would win between Polnareff and a hair-insulted Josuke, probably Josuke, but then again, in my scaling for Josuke, I even admitted that Josuke is not faster than light despite the fanbase calling him that, but however, Polnareff would be scaled to faster than light in my opinion. Polnareff, I would say, does beat Josuke, and I don't even think he would need to remove his armor. As if you've seen in the Death 13 fight, Polnareff was able to hit Kakyoin in the back of the head pretty easily with Silver Chariot, without needing to go violent. So I think Polnareff would be able to dodge Josuke and just land a knockout to the back of the head, kinda taking him out for a little bit. He would probably wait for him to wake up, and that whole thing kinda goes the same. What about Aqua Necklace? Well, taking Jotaro's spot, nothing really changes, because Jotaro kinda really done nothing in that fight. Polnareff could be helpful. The only thing is that Aqua Necklace went after Jotaro and almost killed him. So Polnareff might actually die. I don't remember what Silver Chariot's precision was. I think it was like a B, C maybe. Worst case scenario is like a D or E, and then he's dead. Best case scenario is like a B, and Silver Chariot is able to just slice it before it can go in there. I would say Chariot's fast enough to do that, but the fight would kind of go the same. As for other arcs to come out of it, the next real arc Jotaro was like involved with, like in an actual battle, was Chili Pepper, which, yet again, Jotaro does nothing in that arc, and having Polnareff take a spot means nothing really changes. But I could see him and Okuyasu form a close bond because they were very similar in characters. In fact, I'd go as far as to call Okuyasu a cheap Dollar Tree version of Polnareff. I'm gonna get killed in the comments for it, ain't I? But either way, that whole thing goes the same. Polnareff and not really changing much, but here comes the first change, the rat battle. Josuke may actually never get that technique of him taught, so it's hard to say how that would go. Polnareff would probably do the sword launch thing, and I think he could probably replace Jotaro there. But however, Time Stop was needed to beat the Rats. Could have Polnareff actually pulled off that fight without Time Stop? Silver Cherry may actually need to remove its armor to at least put up a good fight. But I think the arc could go the same. Unless Josuke is shot, then there's no way they're gonna win. Maybe if Polnareff slices the bullet, which, if we're being honest, Polnareff could do that pretty easily. He was able to do that in the Whole Horse fight. If it wasn't for Emperor's ability, he probably would have destroyed that bullet, meaning that Polnareff could have probably destroyed the rat's bullets, and if infected, Josuke can heal him up. The next fight is Kira. How would that whole thing go? I don't really know, because Time Stop was really needed there. I personally think Polnareff would just remove its armor and go and slice down its heart attack, because at that point, Polnareff would try to cut it open, but it probably wouldn't work. And I think Silver Chariot would probably be fast enough to actually distract him. He'd probably still do what Jotaro done, and that whole thing goes the same. What about Polnareff versus Kira? Now, unless Kira ends up surviving this fight, and we go all the way to Bite the Dust because nothing else really changes. Bite the Dust, there's no way to stop it. Polnareff, while Silver Cherry and him are very fast, Kira was slowly getting out of 3 freeze to a point where he would have still hit Bite the Dust. Polnareff would more than likely try to finish the fight there, but I don't think he was fast enough to do that. They needed Time Stop to get that final blow. But what would happen with like Silver Chariot versus Killer Queen in a first encounter? I would give it to Polnareff if armor's already removed. Even with the armor still on, Silver Chariot's a lot faster than Killer Queen, and Killer Queen would only win with sheer strength if that's the case. And Kira's smarter than Polnareff, if we're being honest. Even like a more mature Polnareff, like Part 5 Polnareff, who's a lot smarter than he was in Part 3. I would still say Kira's smarter than him. So I would say that if Kira touches something like a rock or something, or like a coin, and flickers it over to Polnareff, then there's no way he's winning. Which he didn't do against Jotaro. I still think that whole thing would just go the same, but Kira would actually die there, because if you remember, Koichi legitimately had a hole through his chest, and Polnareff would probably get PTSD of what happened to Avdol and Iggy against Ice, and that would probably just cause him to go all out. And I'd say it might even be worse, because Koichi and Kakyoin look very similar, and Polnareff was really close with Kakyoin, so that would make it a lot more tragic. But either way, Silver Chariot is able to kill Kira before he becomes a big threat. Part 4 ends there. They would probably look for the other stand arrow. Don't even know what Kira's dad can do. Maybe he's the new main antagonist, but I don't even think he would be a threat. Polnareff finds him, and the group could probably just deal with him easily. If they're able to get the other arrow, then that's it. And Part 4 ends unless Kira is able to survive the first encounter. If he doesn't, then there's no way they're winning. But we're going to say, for the sake of the story, Polnareff kills Kira right there. How does the future parts change? Now, when it goes to Part 5, would Polnareff be involved? In my opinion, I think he'd be more involved than like Jotaro was. But I feel like he'd probably bring his other reliable buddy, Okuyasu. I don't think him and Koichi would have grown that close to a point where he would go. Maybe Josuke could go. Either Josuke or Okuyasu would take Koichi's spot. While Polnareff would like Koichi and respect him, I don't know if he'd view him in a similar way to how Jotaro did. I think he'd like Okuyasu and Josuke a bit more, so he may bring one or both of them. We're going to say for the sake of the story, he'll bring Josuke, because I think we all wanted Josuke to be there. The main reason that Jotaro never went was because that he didn't want the Joestars to track each other down, so Jotaro would be able to do it. Polnareff doesn't know nothing about that, so he's going to probably bring Josuke with him. As for the Jotaro encounter, Josuke and Polnareff are able to actually stop Jotaro, and I feel like they would actually stick around to help Bruno's team. So all that would go happening, and what would fights change? Polnareff and Josuke would make a lot of the stuff easier, in my opinion. Like, putting them up in some of the fights. Polnareff and Silver Chariot and Josuke with Crazy Diamond were just very fast. Most of the Part 5 crew stands were more based on speed than physical strength. Like, the only stand I'd say was, like, physically strong was Sticky Finger and Purple Haze, which were physically powerful, but only because they had OP abilities to back up with them. Where Crazy Diamond is just pure straight up strength and speed. Chariot's not really that strong, but makes up for being one of the fastest stands. Yeah, that's kind of how that would go. And I would see the story kind of playing out the same with having an actual good healer, aka Josuke with Crazy Diamond, with no painful healing, and Polnareff who just speed blitz everyone with Silver Chariot. Meanwhile, what would Jotaro be doing? Jotaro would play a similar role to Polnareff, but unlike Polnareff, I don't see him being a paragelitic. I don't think he would basically be wheelchair bound. He wouldn't be losing mechanical body parts. He wouldn't have all that stuff, and he probably look the same. Only real thing is that he may. It's hard to say if he would pick a fight with Diavolo, and if he did, he'd probably lose a few fingers, or he'd probably have a scar on him. I'd probably say he'd have like a scar on his eye, maybe a few replaced fingers, maybe even a mechanical hand, kind of like his grandpa. I don't know. But I think, as for what the Requiem would be, maybe Polnareff gets the Requiem. I don't think he would. But who would the body swaps be involved with? I still think the body swaps would go the same. I think that we'd either get Star Platinum Requiem or Silver Chariot Requiem. And Star Platinum Requiem, more than likely, is not what Silver Chariot Requiem would have been. I do think we'd get Silver Chariot Requiem, though. So Polnareff gives himself SCR. Everything kind of goes the same. Josuke and Jotaro can switch bodies. One of them might die. I don't think they would, personally. Polnareff could still become Coco Jumbo. The entire story can kind of go the same. Maybe Jotaro could stop Diavolo before anything. I'd say that he may actually stop him on the staircase, if that's the case, because of time stop. But I personally don't know how that would go. Would be interesting to see what Jotaro versus Diavolo could have been like. I don't think I'd ever do a versus battle on it because, good God, I feel like if I picked one side, the other side's gonna attack me. So, yeah, I'm probably not gonna do that one. If you guys want to see it, then I hope I can try it one day, but at the moment I'm not going to. But yeah, if I were to say my opinion on the matter, it would honestly depend if Jotaro knows time, if Diavolo has the time skip in advance. Like, if he were to fight him without knowing about time skip, then Diavolo wins. If he knows about time skip in advance, then Jotaro wins. That's just my opinion. Polnareff and Josuke would probably not be able to beat Diavolo. And I think the story can go the same with Josuke surviving. Polnareff can still become Coco Jumbo and all that can happen. Now it is time for the sixth and final part of this whole thing from the OG timeline. What changes? Nothing really. Jotaro is still alive and would have survived Part 5 in this timeline. So yeah, and if we're going with the scenario where Jolene still does exist, Part 5 could honestly, not Part 5, but Part 6 can go the same. My only real change to come out of it could be that maybe because Jotaro knows about the Part 5 and 4 crew, he could spend time with his daughter. I mean, he would have missed out on 9 birthdays to make up those other birthdays, those other 9 birthdays he missed out on, and spend those 10 birthdays with her, because he would probably know all these people, and honestly, he could have actually done that. Like, he knew the Morioh Warriors, and could have gotten them to help, but come on, man, if you love your daughter so much, then why not have Josuke, Okuyasu, and Koichi do everything for you? But I digress. Part 6 would honestly go the same. If Requiem's involved, Star Platinum Requiem beats Pucci. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. If Jarno's involved, GER defeats Made in Heaven. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The story could go the same with the universe reset. If the universe reset's not happening, then it's hard to say. Time stop it could actually advance over time. that's actually something I actually forgot to mention, that in Part 5 his time stop could advance. Like, I should have mentioned it, but I'll mention it here because I want to mention it in advance. So, in Part 4, he went from, like, Part 3 to Part 4, he went from 5 seconds all the way to 2 seconds. But let's say you keep training on that time stop. I think he can make it to 8 seconds during Part 5. Maybe 7 or 9. I don't know. But what about Part 6? Now, he may actually... That's 10 years in the future. If Jotaro is given motivation to still train with said stand, he's got a good estimation around 8 seconds, longest being 11 or 12 seconds. Meaning that they could probably stop Whitesnake or Maidenheaven if that is the case. But that all depends if Jotaro does not stop using a stand after Part 5. And I don't think he would, because he kinda did not stop after Part 6 ended, so... I would say the whole story actually could change for the better, but then again, there is a chance it could change nothing, but the only real change being that Polnareff at least gets to appear in another part. But, that's all I got for you today. If you have any ideas, like your take on the scenario, or if you have any video suggestions for JoJo related, or if you have any video ideas for Danganronpa related stuff, or Death Note related stuff, leave them in the comments. I would love to cover them, and I could try to cover them sometime in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.